This week is Parshas Tazria, which usually occurs after Pesach. This year, because of the Iber Yoris before Pesach, I made a list of words from our Parsha, and I probably could make a bigger list. I'm just going to read you words. Se'es, Sapachas, Baheres, Noishenes, Tzoreves, Nesek, Behorois, Boyhak, Yimoret, Gibeach, or Gabachas, Kireach, or Karachas, Poirachas, Mameres, Pecheses.
You can't just make noises and you're supposed to think that they're...
Well, you see, this year, Tazria and Torah are separate. Tazria, the whole Tazria is 64 or 67 psukim. So if you divide that by 7, it's less than 10 psukim per day. So you'll have an opportunity to read those syllables and decide whether they're words or not independently. I decided that I'm going to give a sheet on these words. These words fascinate me. They have no meaning. No meaning. To me, the beginning of it is in Parshas Vayetze. You have words in Chumash. If you're familiar with Parshas Vayetze, one of the things that happens in Parshas Vayetze is that Yaakov Avinu uses the genetics, right? The principle of a recessive gene to manipulate his father-in-law's Lavan's sheep, that he should get better sheep by taking pieces of wood and stripping them, as you meant from Chumash Rashi. So you have in the pasuk different words, and there are words that mean different colors or different shapes, and you have something called kshurim and atufim. Kshurim means tied, and atufim means wrapped. And Rashi says kshurim means the animals that are born early and they're very strong. Atufim means animals that are born late and they're very weak. The context of those two words is not important at the moment, but you have words of this is scripture, this is God's words. When you look at these words, and they're used in a particular context, they're used in a particular place, and if I could get to the bottom of these words, it would delight me. Right, Tzaras is called Se'es, Baheres, or Sapachas. The three words. Se'es, Baheres, Sapachas, and Baheres, Se'es, and Sapachas. Now later on in the Parsha, you have more Tzarasin. I spent over an hour and I researched a little bit of the first three. So I don't know how happy I'm going to be about this delivery altogether. But my goal in today's class, and if next week was not Pesach, I would continue it next week, or Rabbi Tzekena gives me a night to do Parsha. Next week is Torah, I'll continue doing these words. I'm fascinated by these words. What do these words mean? What does Se'es mean? It's the name of Tzaras. What does Baheres mean? It's the name of Tzaras. What does Sapachas mean? It's the name of Tzaras. Nega means a wound. Tzaras means leprosy. I didn't include on my list words that actually mean what they're supposed to mean. I included on my list words that seem to be used in the Torah in ways that are artificial. It's like the Torah is looking for words and it's borrowing words. It's a chumash. Hashem is trying to describe something, it can't find the perfect word, so he borrows the imperfect words and applies it. Se'es, Sapachas, and Baheres. Adam kia be'er be'sari. Se'es, Sapachas, and Baheres. And I made a list. The word Se'es appears in 4 psukim. The word Baheres appears in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words. And the word Sapachas, and I may be wrong about this, appears in 5 psukim. These words appear again and again. If you have proper time, you go through each pasuk, you look up at each one of the Mefarshim say, and then you get a sense of what the words mean. So to be candid and blunt, I only did the first 3 words, Se'es, Sapachas, and Baheres. God knows, I spent a very long time. And I got home from the Matzah Baker probably 6:15. Pretty much since then, I've been doing this. Literally. And all I got is 3 words, and I'm very, very, very not satisfied. But I'm giving you a class. I have to come and give you a class. I told the Dava I begged, please Dava Maidav, I still need a few more minutes. I'm just going to say one thing. I have a list of Rishonim. RaSaG gone, Rashi says nothing. Rashbam, Even Ezer, RaMbaN. RaMbaN has very interesting things to say. Chizkuni, and then RaMbaN and Halacha. But the sefer that I went to, and I knew he would help me, but it was much more helpful than I thought, is a Kabbalah sefer called Kehillas Yankiv. The Kehillas Yankiv is a sefer that Rebbe would quote from time to time. It's an encyclopedia of Kabbalah in alphabetical order. There's a few such sfarim. There's a sefer called Ma'orei Oyer, which is older than the Kehillas Yankiv. The Kehillas Yankiv was a Jew who was a chassid, actually. He was a Talmud of one of the great Chassidish Rebbes. He lived at the time of the Mittel Rebbe. He's known in the world as a big lamd and nigle because he wrote a sefer, a lamdish sefer called Malay Aroyim. He was also a big makubal, and he made a book in alphabetical order explaining words api Kabbalah. So he has a whole expose on Se'es, a whole expose on Sapachas, and a whole expose on Baheres. And he was helpful. He was, I guess you could say, he was a little bit helpful. So this is what tonight's class is. I'm going to be discussing 3 Hebrew words that none of them have any meaning to anybody, including me. And we're going to try and take something useful out of it. Go ahead. You want to say something here?
Rashi and the Gemara mention what they are.
The Mefarshim say what they are. But you have to understand, there's 2 things, what the words mean and what the words really mean. What does the word se'es mean? It's the color of white. Yes, se'es is the color of white. Se'es means to lift. Se'es means to lift. Right? Yes, se'es, yes, it oz. Reuven was told you were supposed to get se'es and oz. Shin al tov, it's the same word. That means kahuna. The Kehillas Yankiv brings 5 or 6 different interpretations of these words. Meaning, these words are not tzara specific. They're almost borrowed. So it's not a question of knowing what they mean. It's a question of getting to the root of the word. What does this word really mean, and why are we applying it to tzaras? That's my endeavor. That's my...
Tzaras, the word tzaras, any other meaning?
Tzaras means leprosy. Tzaras is a word that actually has a translation. But se'es, sapachas, baheres, my whole list. Gabachas, karachas, parachas, mameres, pecheses. You want to help me over there? Beharois, boyhaki, moret, nesek, tzareves, neshenes. All of these words, I don't think they're specifically for tzaras. They're borrowed in the Chumash to mean tzaras also, and this fascinates me. If I had 10 hours, I would have sit on it for 10 hours. And I didn't have as much time as I would have liked because the matzah bakery took longer than I thought it would. But anyway, so I'm going to go through 3 words. That's my topic tonight. Just 3 words. And if Rabbi Zekenik will kick me in the pants hard enough next Wednesday night, I'll be on Zoom. I'm going to try at least. So I'll do a few more of these words. Maybe I will continue this as well. The pasuk of Tzaras begins, Adam ki yeh be'er besari, a man who will have in the skin of his flesh. Se'es sapachas beheres. Se'es means one thing, sapachas means the second thing, beheres means the third thing. V'haya be'er besari leneged tzaras. It'll be on the skin of his flesh for a wound, which is called tzaras. V'hu v'al Aaron he brought to Aaron HaKoyin, oi, elachar b'nav HaKoyin, to one of Aaron HaKoyin's sons, who is a koyin. And of course, you know the halacha is, and I mentioned this to Yishamayir HaKoyin before, for those of us who learn Perek Echad Layoim, who suffered the terrible guilt of being bad Hasidim, because the Rebbe always wanted people to learn 3 Prakim Layoim, and that 1 Perek a day, be consoled that this year, the Chumash and the RaMbaN is on the same exact topic. We're learning Hilchas Tzaras and RaMbaN. Today we learned, I think, Perek Chesed Tes, and we're learning Hilchas Tzaras and Chumash. So David is just smiling at us and saying, you're not such a bad Jew if you learn Perek Echad Layoim and RaMbaN, because he's aligning the Parshas HaShavua. And of course, next week we're going to be learning about Negei Batim, which will be the end of Hilchas Tzaras. Well, again, will be the Eibush just for 2 weeks is saying, I don't know how the Rebbe feels, but I forgive you for learning Perek Echad Layoim and RaMbaN. So first, let me start with this. The Likutei Torah says, this is very, very famous. Alter Rebbe says, and I mentioned it in my morning class. Those who were at my Tziddik class on Sunday morning, where we did Asham Mitzoira, right? This Sunday morning, also Bashgacha Pratis, with the same thing as the Chitas. Asham Mitzoira was this Sunday morning. So I mentioned to you this, the Alter Rebbe and the RaMbaN, right? The RaMbaN says, a lot of Rishonim say, the Gemara says it, the Tzaras has to do with Lashon Hara. The Alter Rebbe says something very different. The Alter Rebbe says that Tzaras happens to very big people, or in a very, very high level. And they fixed everything about themselves. The only thing is they have a teeny tiny chesaron on the outside, on the surface. So Hashem wants to correct their surface also. So if they don't correct it themselves, the Eibush should give them tzaras. Adam, right? There's 4 names to man. Adam, Ish, Enish, Gever. The highest allusion to man is Adam. The highest title of man is Adam. And by tzaras, it says Adam. But the Mitzvah is very bad, you know? You know how bad Mitzvah is? He's nishlach chutz l'shalosh machnes, and he said that of all 3 camps. It's a very funny halacha. By a Mitzvah, it's a din that you're supposed to say Tomei Tomei. You know that? A man is Tomei. Whatever. Paradum, Tumas Meis, Tumas Sheretz, Tumas, you know what, Tumas Nevela. You don't have to run around screaming here, Tomei Tomei. But tzaras, there's a special halacha. You have to go, he has to be isolated by himself. Badar Yeshiv, and you have to say Tomei Tomei. It's like a terrible thing. So the Alter Rebbe says, you know who gets tzaras? The biggest Bali Madrege. People who are called Adam, they have a teeny tiny chesaron just on the epidermis, on the highest outermost layer of their skin, because they're in such a high level, the Eibush told them to such a high standard, and because of this teeny tiny chesaron, they're in the worst kind of tumah, the nishla chutz l'shalosh machnes, Tomei Tomei, you have to scream, you see a mitzvah, Tomei Tomei, Tomei Tomei. So that's the foundation of tzaras. What's the Kabbalah behind it? In other words, the Alter Rebbe says, tzaras is a very perfect person, but he has a teeny tiny chesaron. What would be the Kabbalah behind it? So again, I looked it up in the Kilas Yaakov. It's an Ayin Beis also, but I didn't have a chance to look up the Ayin Beis. There's so much to look up. The Mukubalim say, the Kilas Yaakov says, it's all based on Kisvei Arizal, of course, that the Sheidish of tzaras is a person whose bina is disconnected from his chachma. Yippee-doo. You want to know where tzaras comes from? If your bina is disconnected from your chachma, that's the beginning of tzaras. Now what in heaven's name does that mean? Bina is a very high level. Api Kabbalah, bina is higher than ishtalshlus. Bina is called tshuva, you know that? Bina is a high level. Bina is shem sag. So how terrible is it if your bina is separated from your chokhmah? And this is the source of tzaras according to Kabbalah. The answer in short is this. What is chokhmah? What is bina? Chokhmah is intellectual intuition. Bina is intellectual thoroughness. Right? Bina opens everything up. Bina wants to understand everything very well. Chokhmah just instinctively feels, has a sense. So it's brought in Hasidus, from Kabbalah, of course, that Chokhmah's intuitiveness has a bittul in it. Chokhmah's intuitiveness has a certain bittul. In other words, when you have a new idea that you don't fully understand, it's humbling to you. When you then process it and understand it very, very, very well, you feel very good about yourself and you develop a very good ego. So the Sefer Yetzirah says, Havein b'chokhmah and chakein b'bina. Means you have to keep your chokhmah and your bina connected. Chokhmah is the source of bittul. Bina is the source of understanding and yeshus. If you understand something very, very well and it gives you yeshus, it's because you separate your chokhmah from your bina. That's the source of tzaras, in case you needed to know. The Alter Rebbe says tzaras happens to people on a very, very high level. And the only place to have a chesarna is in the skin deep. What's the Aveira, which is the source of tzaras? That there's a lack of chokhmah in the bina. It means that if you're a very smart guy, you understand the Torah very well, and you're lacking in humility, that's the source of tzaras, according to Kabbalah. If the chokhmah is separate from the bina, so you're lacking in humility, that's the sherish of tzaras. So according to the Kutatera, according to the Alter Rebbe, tzaras is an illness that befalls very great people, very high level. That because they're lacking a certain even higher level, tzaras affects them. The RaMbaN again connects it to Lashon Hara, and if you were here on Sunday, I explained to you that the RaMbaN links Lashon Hara to the 3 cardinal sins. The Gemara says, the RaMbaN brings the halacha, V'iter HaKadosh Baruch Hu alavein, Avei Zara shvichas dam, Avei Zara gilad shvichas dam, V'itav mit Lashon Hara, that Hashem considers Lashon Hara worse than all 3 Averos, Avei Zara gilad and shvichas dam. So the nigla of tzaras is, because Lashon Hara is a pretty bad thing, the chassidus of tzaras is a very, very fine thing that happens to very, very great people. Now, as I said to you before, my intention tonight is to discuss 3 words. In the Chumash, the order of the 3 words is Seis, Sapachas, Baheres. That's the order in the Chumash. But I'm not teaching them in order. I'm doing Baheres first.
The last one?
The last one first. It's in Kapitel Yud Gimel, Pasuk Beis, Adam Kia Be'er Besari Seis Sapachas Oy Baheres. I am starting with Baheres. You know why I'm starting with Baheres? Because Baheres actually means bright. The proper translation of the word Bohir, Bohir Bashokim, Baheres means bright. In other words, of the three words, Seis has nothing to do with white. Sapachas has nothing to do with colors at all. Baheres actually means, it doesn't mean white, but at least it means bright, lichtig.
Clear.
Bahir means bright. Maybe it means clear. Bright, lichtig, bright. So Baheres is close enough to color white to say that it actually is the correct use of the word. The Even Ezra writes, and I'm reading his words, Noida sheyasa kedemus ois v'simen. Those are his words, and the RaMbaN quotes him also. I got all the notes in the world. I got papers and papers and papers. I got plenty of papers, but you have time to read them. Yeah, he translates v'hu noida sheyasa kedemus ois v'simen. I think, I don't know, but I think what the Even Ezra is saying is that the word Baheres actually is a correct word for tzaras. Tzaras means a white coloration. Baheres means a brightness. So the Even Ezra says, and the RaMbaN brings him, that Baheres means an idea that's close enough to the color white to actually be not a borrowed term. That's how I'm understanding it. Baheres means white. Seis doesn't mean white. Sapachas certainly doesn't mean white. It's come to mean white, but it doesn't mean white. But Baheres does. So Baheres, at least, you can say that the word isn't entirely borrowed. It has some actual association with the concept of the color white. Okay? So the Rishonim all brings, first of all, the RaSaG, RaSaG God, and the RaSaG God, you have to understand, he wrote his, the RaSaG God, for those who do not know, RaSaG God lived 1200 years ago, which means he lived closer to the time that the Mandrashim were written than to us. The truth is, so did Rashi. RaSaG God lived a couple of hundred years before the RaMbaN. And probably 100, maybe even 20 for the Rashi, I don't know. Maybe one of the Goinim. RaSaG God wrote two Pirushim on Chumash. He wrote what's called Pirush Aruch, a long Pirush, which we have very little of. And then he wrote Pirush HaKotzer, a very short Pirush. The Pirush HaKotzer is really more or less a translation, it's like a Targum, it's a translation of words. And he wrote it in Arabic. So when you're reading RaSaG, you're reading an Arabic translation, or Arabic words that are translated by the Moitzi L'Oyer. So on the word Baheres, RaSaG Yigon says, Beis Kuf Ayin Hey. I have no idea how to pronounce it. I don't think it means Bika, because that's Hebrew. It's Baka'ah. It's some Arabic word, which is translated as Mara Lovan Alega Shchar Shchar. Baheres means the color of white on a setting of black. That's how he translates the word. So if you have the color white against the setting of black, it's going to be very white because of contrast, correct? The Mishnah says in Egoyim that some people are very dark-skinned, like the Africans. Some people are very fair-skinned, like the, what does he say? Anybody know? Like the Germans. That's what he says. That's what the Mishnah says in Masechet Egoyim. When you're looking at the skin, the whiteness of Baheres, and you want to know if it's a ras or not, you can't look at it against the skin of somebody who's very dark, with the skin of somebody someone who's Mediterranean, what they call in English olive skin, not too dark and not too bright. In other words, to be able to see the whiteness against German skin, you're not going to see the whiteness under any conditions. Against African skin, the person's going to be white, even if it's not really white. This is the Mishnah gives those examples. But Baheres, RaSaG said, is like white set on black, meaning it's a very, very bright whiteness, like whiteness set against the backdrop of black. The RaSaG doesn't say the same thing about Seis, and he certainly doesn't say the same thing about Sapachas. So Baheres means white. Of all the words, Baheres actually means, it actually means the color white. Huh? I'd say it again, please. Again, I'm reading a translation of his translation. He brings an Arabic word that's spelled Beis Kuf Ayin Hey. I have no idea what that word is. But the translator translates it, the color white on a setting of black. So Baheres is the closest of the words associated with tzaras that actually is associated with the proper color. And a lot of the Rishonim say very, very similar things. So first of all, let me say this to you. The RaMbaN, which is halacha, and this is of course based on the Mishnayos, the RaMbaN brings this in the Gemara Masechta Shavuos, Maran Goyim Shtaim Shenad, right? There's 4 colors, there's 4 whites. The brightest white is called Baheres, and it's white like snow. The second brightest white is called Se'es, and it's white like the wool of a sheep that's a day old, very pure. And then there's 2 Sapachas. There's a Sapachas of Baheres and the Sapachas of Se'es. The Sapachas of Baheres is like plaster, like white plaster, and the Sapachas of Se'es is like the white of an egg. And the halacha of tzaras is that all 4 whites are mitztaref. White as snow is much brighter than the white of an egg, and the white of the hair of a sheep is brighter than the white of plaster. All 4 whites can join together to the sheet of tzaras, which is a gris, lamed vav shaydis. But the halacha is you're not allowed to paskin about tzaras until you know the difference between the colors. There's 4 whites, they're all tameh, but you can't just say, it's more bright than the white of an egg, so it doesn't matter how bright. You have to be able to identify the 4 distinct colors of tzaras in order to be able to be paskin maran and goyim. You have to be a baki in the matters. And of course, if you've learned Chumash and you've learned RaMbaN this week, there's actually 8. There's the 4, Se'es v'Sapachte, Baheres v'Sapachte, and then there's how each one is mixed with a little red. Mara Lavona Adam Demes. A white with a little red is also tzaras. It adds up to 8 different colors. They're all mitztaref, okay? But Baheres, according to the RaMbaN, it's based on the Mishnah, of course, is white like snow. It's very, very, very bright. Now, who offers interesting insight on Baheres? The RaMbaN. The only problem with the RaMbaN is I don't understand what he's saying. Otherwise, he's brilliant, which I guess it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. The RaMbaN says that the meaning of Baheres is min halecha halavono. That's what he says. 3 words. Lecha means moisture, that's white. Min halecha halavono, from white moisture. I don't have a clue what he's trying to say. When I tell you Se'es, you'll see by contrast what the RaMbaN is saying. I would like to believe that what the RaMbaN is hinting at is that there's 4 elements: fire, wind, water, and earth. And according to Kabbalah, your character can be fire, wind, water, or earth, right? You have a Mara Lavana, a white gallbladder, a Mara Shcheda, a black gallbladder, a Mara Yeruka, a yellow or a green gallbladder, a Mara Duma, and a red gallbladder. By Se'es, he says that that's Mara Yeruka, yellow or green. So apparently he holds that Baheres comes from having a Mara Lavana. The leichus, the moisture, and the word leichus is sometimes used for personality of Lavana. The RaMbaN links the color Baheres to a certain personality type, right? You can have Mara Lavana means a person who's happy and free and open. And in the language of the Tanya, he talks a lot and doesn't think too much before he talks. That kind of personality is going to produce Baheres. This is the RaMbaN's unique insight on the word Baheres. Now, let's go to Se'es. Okay, I gave you I just spoke a long time about Baheres. Let me go to Se'es. Se'es is the first word, and nobody says that Se'es means the color white. Nobody. Because Se'es has nothing to do with color white. Se'es means to lift. To lift. So RaSaG writes, Shama, Shin Aleph Mem Hey. It's an Arabic word. The translator of RaSaG writes, Mokum Sheini B'Mareu Mishar Chelki Aguf. Se'es simply means a change in color versus the rest of the color of your skin. Meaning most people, their skin color is uniform, right? The skin color on your hand and on your face, people have different complexions, right? Some people are darker skinned, some people are brighter, lighter skinned, but all of your skin is more or less the same color. Se'es means a change in the natural skin color. By Baheres, RaSaG said it's white juxtaposed against black, which is very bright. By Se'es, RaSaG says that it's Mokum Sheini B'Mareu Mishar Chelki Aguf. It is a change in color from this place to other places. Now here's the weird thing, Chavira. Listen to this. Most of the Rishonim, RaSaG, Chizkuni, okay, just those two guys, and I think others say it as well, that the word se'es means to be lifted up, to be higher. Now there's a rule, that if you have light and shadow, if you look at you're out in the street and there's the sun is shining and you have some shadow and you have white on the sidewalk, the rule is that the shadow will appear higher than the white. White will always appear lower. Like it says in the Chumash, "Maneh amoik min ha'er." White always looks like it's deeper. If you have a smooth surface and part of it is white and part of it is another color, there's a presumption that the white will always appear lower, indented, like as if it's lower. So the word se'es actually means the opposite of tzaras. Baheres means a very bright color, so it's very deep. Se'es means it's not so bright, so it's raised. So the word se'es, which is used for tzaras, actually means not that white. You hear? Se'es means lifted. Lifted means not deep. A bright color will always appear deeper than a darker color. So se'es means less of tzaras than Baheres. It's so interesting. If you don't look this up, it doesn't have any meaning to you. Se'es means less of, Baheres means very bright. Se'es means not so bright, but bright enough to be a mitzayda. So it's very funny. The first word in the Chumash is Adam. It doesn't say Adam Yirkei B'Tzadi Baheres say Se'es Sapachas. It says Se'es Sapachas Baheres. Baheres is the only word that actually could possibly mean white, and it's mentioned third. Se'es means not so white. Sapachas, you'll find out in a moment what Sapachas means. It means a whole nother pshat. But the first two of the three words that describe the colors white in tzaras don't mean white at all. Se'es means less white. But it's white enough to be considered tzaras. This is what some of the Rishonim say. The Even Ezra says, and the RaMbaN brings the Even Ezra, that the shadish of the word se'es is from the word fire. Eish. Fire. Okay, now what in heaven's name does se'es have to do with fire? So someone comments on this Even Ezra and says fire rises. And the connotation of the word se'es is that the white is less deep, less strong, and therefore it's a little higher than if it was sapachas. So the Even Ezra is saying that se'es, he's saying the same thing as the RaSaG is saying. Se'es means a white that's less white, it rises up like fire. The RaMbaN jumps on this Even Ezra, and he links se'es to Mara Yeruka, to the yellow gallbladder. Now I'm not an expert in this subject, I'm really not. But there's 4 gallbladders, okay? White, black, yellow, and red. So white is mayim, is leichus. Dark is offer, is earth, which is heavy, right? And yellow and red, which is which? Apparently yellow is fire, and red is wind. It should be the other way around. But he says he connects tzaras. He brings the RaMbaN, the Even Ezra, who says that se'es means fire, and he connects it to the Mara Yeruka, to the gallbladder, which is yellow or green, which has to do with fire. So it turns out that according to the RaMbaN, Baheres means that you have an overly strong Mara Lavana, and the leichos of Lavan produces the tzaras, which is moisture. Se'es means you have an overly heavy Mara Yeruka, which has to do with fire. I don't know why. And that's why you have a neg which is se'es. So according to the RaMbaN, it's not just different colors, it's different characters. Baheres comes from a certain personality type. Se'es comes from a different personality type. So different types of tzaras, according to this RaMbaN, are going to be based on the kind of person you are. If you're a person with a Mara Lavana, you're more likely to get se'es. If you're a person with a Mara Yeruka, you're more likely to get se'es. So the RaMbaN is actually saying that se'es and Baheres are not 2 different color whites. They're 2 different personalities that show themselves in 2 different color whites. And se'es will never be as bright as Baheres, like fire is never going to be as white as water, I suppose. Okay, now I'm not going to ask you if you understand because I don't understand.
What do you mean by that?
But we're saying they don't understand? I can explain it. I can explain it better.
The fire and the water, like the white.
He says by Baheres, this is the Even Ezra.
Yeah.
By Baheres, his wording is, the RaMbaN says, min haleicha halavona. Now, leicha means moisture, but the word leicha can also mean element. Like one of the words for the dal, you say this is the dal leichis. That's how the RaSaG would use it. So it means the mara levana. And by se'ez, he says mara yeruka, but he connects it to fire. So ebazei, mara yeruka is eish, so mara aduma would have to be ruach, which is interesting. But okay, this is what he says. I'm not going to argue with him because I don't know nothing. I'm just saying. So according to this RaMbaN, the difference between se'ez and Baheres is not just how bright it is, right? Baheres means white. Se'ez, according to most of the Rishonim, means less white. We call it tzaras, not so bad. We're calling it by a negative term. It's not so white. And the RaMbaN says, no, it means two different things. Now, what about the word sapachas? Samach peyeches tov. Sapachas means a tofel, something which is secondary to something else. That's the meaning of the word. So the RaSaG again brings you an Arabic word, aleph ayin aleph reish tzadikei aratza, and he translates again as a discoloration in the body. Almost all the Rishonim translate the word sapachas as tofel, secondary to. The RaMbaN does it, the Even Ezra does it, the Chizkuni does it. Okay? The word sapachas is used in Tanakh in many places. If there's a group of people doing something and you want to join them, you would say, sapcheni, let me join. Add me. He brings two psukim in Tanakh. One of the two psukim that he brings is the word v'nispechu al beis yankiv and sapcheni no. So the word sapachas means an add-on. And the Chazal hold that there's two types of sapachas. There's sapachas of se'ez and there's sapachas of beheres. Now any person who learns this and listen to this shiur, even on a rudimentary level, would go away with a million questions. Number one, the first word the pasuk should bring is Baheres, because Baheres actually means white. Number two, the pasuk should bring.
So why did it start with the?
It starts with se'ez, then goes sapachas, which doesn't mean white at all, and then goes Baheres. The seder of the three is really, really weird. It should say Adam kier be'er besari Baheres, which means a bright white. Se'ez means a white which is a little higher, so it's less bright, and then say sapachas, because sapachas means a tofel. There's two sapachas. There's sapachas of Baheres, which is white like plaster. There's sapachas of se'ez, which is white like the white of an egg. But to say that is se'ez sapachas Baheres, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. But that's to say, the sapachas means secondary too. Let me go to the RaMbaN, because the RaMbaN is the one who offers us the most fascinating insight. The RaMbaN says that se'ez has to do with mara yeruka, Baheres has to do with mara levana, and sapachas means a mixture of both. That's how he translates it. If a person has netiya towards mara yeruka, which means yellow or green, he's going to get se'ez, which is less white, which is connected to fire, which rises. Don't ask me why. If a person has a mara levana, I have to assume, then he's going to get Baheres, which is a brighter white. Right? If he's a little bit of both, so the RaMbaN translates sapachas hane'esefes mishtein. Sapachas means a little bit of both. If you mix together a little bit se'ez, a little bit Baheres, then you get sapachas. So he holds that sapachas is a mixture of se'ez and Baheres. Now, which is a problem. Why? Because in halacha we don't say it that way. We do not see sapachas as a little bit of se'ez and Baheres. Why? Because we hold that there's two sapachas. There's a sapachas separately for se'ez, separately for Baheres. So you have to argue that this RaMbaN is not halachic. Because according to halacha, there's a se'ez connected to, there's a sapachas of se'ez, and there's a sapachas of Baheres. And the RaMbaN holds that it's a little bit of both. So the RaMbaN is giving us a pshat, which is not telling us the halacha. He's giving us a pshat, which is telling us something which is in between. Now, our great friend is waiting at the door. I'm supposed to teach downstairs Tuesday nights, but I want to tell you something. I don't have time to give you the whole Kabbalah. But I'm just going to tell you this. The Kehilas Yankiv who did a wonderful job. I'm delighted. I bought a new print of Kehilas Yankiv. It's very easy to read everything. In Kabbalah's fun, when someone's making mistakes, no one's ever going to know what Seif Kol Hadei is. But nevertheless, and he says that there are 4 kingdoms: Bavel, Modai, Yavon, and the 4th, I guess, is Edom. The 4 kingdoms. So there's a lot of examples for it. The first example is Yaakov Avinu's dream. And Avram Avinu's vision. It says it goes in the 4 Malchiyos, right? There's a lot of examples for it. But yes, in the nevuah in the vision of Nebuchadnezzar wanted to be a king forever. He knew he was going to die, but he wanted that his kingdom should last forever. So he made a tzelem, a statue all of gold. And then the Navi had a vision where the head was of gold and the body was of bronze. And he was explained that this goes on the 4 Malchiyos, that he's not going to last forever. And the feet, I think, are made of wood, which goes on Edom, which is Rome and I guess Christianity and Islam. 1 minute. So the Kilas Yankiv links Se'es Sapachas and Baheres Kabbalistically to the 4 kingdoms. Se'es is Bovel, Sapachas is Modai, and Baheres is Yavon. And I guess the 4th color would be Eden. Now here's what's mind-blowing about it. Bovel is Chochmah. Modai is Bina. And Yavon is Teferes. In other words, according to Kabbalah, the reason it says first Se'es, then Sapachas, and then Baheres, even though it should have said Baheres, Se'es, and Sapachas, because according to Kabbalah, that's the right order. Se'es, which means a less bright whiteness, means what? It's not such a bad tzaras. Because even though the definition of tzaras, according to Kabbalah, Seyirusa means Bina without Chochmah, Se'es actually means Chochmah, but there's nothing wrong with the Chochmah. That's why it comes first. Sapachas means Bina. There's a whole Kabbalah about Shem Sag, don't ask. So in halacha, Baheres, first of all, in Hebrew, Baheres means white. Se'es doesn't mean white, and Baheres is not a color. But in Kabbalah, Se'es is Chochmah, Sapachas is Bina, Baheres is Teferes, Zoh. So it's actually written in order. In Pshat, it makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense. But according to Kabbalah, it makes sense. Se'es means Chochmah. Now, I told you in the beginning of tonight's class that according to Kabbalah, what's Tzaras coming from? When Bina is separated from Chochmah. Bovel is Chochmah, gold, Chochmah, but it's with a Chesaron, it's Klipa. So the first Tzaras that says, all them give a Besadik. You have a Tzaras and it's not so bad. Now why would you start that way? Because it's the Tzaras, Nevadeg of Chochmah. It's the smallest Chesaron. It's such a tiny Chesaron that you have Chochmah. There's a little bit of a Chesaron in your Chochmah, so it's creating a discoloration in your skin. So the first Tzaras that's listed is the finest. Sapachas is Bina. Bina means I'm separated from Chochmah. When you're separated from Chochmah, it's no good. And Baheres, which is physically the brightest color, it means it's the worst tzaras. So it's the lowest level. So when you read this pasuk, Adam Mekia Be'er Besares Eis Sapachas of Baheres, you say, whoa, shouldn't it say Baheres Eisei Sapachas? The answer is, according to Kabbalah, the Seder of the Menugayim is listed from the least bad to the most bad. Baheres is the worst. Okay, if you listened, you enjoyed. If you didn't listen, I'm sorry I wasted your time. Maybe next week we'll have a Zoom, but I'm going to be at the beginning of next week, we have still classes. Okay, Chazak.